A lot of iPhones have the telephoto lens on the backside, and you can see it's like a usual thing that the iPhone has a dual or triple lens setup. So what can you do with the telephoto lens? I'm not going to be talking about a wide angle lens. You probably know that I consider that one to be a lot more useful, but let's just focus on purely the telephoto lens, what you can do with this, should you consider buying an iPhone with this, and all of the things you need to know about it. It's Lucas from Apple Facts, and let's get started. Well, the telephoto lens is in a kind of weird position right now because it has been here for quite a while. The first time it has been released or brought to our attention was with the iPhone 7 Plus. And it's been just going on with the iPhones since then. So all of the devices that have include iPhone 7 Plus, like I said, 8 Plus, the iPhone 10, iPhone 10s, 10s Max, 11 Pro, and 11 Pro Max. The classic 11 obviously does not have it. So what can you do with this? I mean, yeah, there are like two main uses for this telephoto lens or telephoto camera. I'm gonna go over all of these things, so make sure to watch till the end so you know for sure if you really need it or not, or what exactly you actually can do with this right now. On the iPhone 11 Pro Max, the telephoto lens is this one right here. This is the main lens. This is the wide angle lens. On the iPhone 10 or 10s, you can see it is this one at the bottom. Here we only have the dual lens setup, but the general rule of thumb is that the lens in the corner is the main wide angle lens, not the ultra wide angle lens, but the main classic camera, and the underneath it is just the telephoto lens. When it comes to the specs of this camera, you should probably only know that it has the aperture of f2.0, so enough lighting can actually get inside it. The wide angle lens, I mean the ultra wide, has the aperture of f2.2, which means that one is going to give you even more grainy pictures and images. So I think this one is actually pretty good when it comes to the lighting and the aperture. As you probably know, Apple has removed it from the iPhone 11, and they also tried to do it with the iPhone 10R. So it's kind of weird. I don't know if Apple is going to keep putting it into their iPhones, but nonetheless, there are many iPhones already with this telephoto lens, so it kind of makes sense to know what it does and how you can actually use it. And we are already getting to the first use, and that is the optical zoom. And you heard me right, it is actually probably one of the most important things when it comes to the telephoto lens, because it allows you to zoom in optically. It means that no digital zoom is involved up to a certain point. So if you open up camera like this, you can see that we have this toggles right there. We have 1x, we have 2, and a 0.5. So what does it do? Obviously, this is going to activate the ultra wide angle lens. This is the main lens, and the 2x is the lens that we call the telephoto lens. So now you are using this, but watch what happens. Right now, if I place my finger on the lens, so I just cover it, you're gonna be able to see it very quickly. So it's kind of weird. I mean, it's kind of hard to spot, but if anything gets in the way, you can see a little blur. I'm gonna show it to you later on the iPhone 10 because there it actually works a lot better. I mean, you can see it better because it works slower. Right now on the iPhone 11 Pro, it's just really fast due to the A13 Bionic. But what I'm trying to say is that if you put a finger on the lens, it changes quickly in a matter of seconds to the main lens. So let me show you what it actually does and what I mean on the iPhone 10. So let's do the same thing, open up camera, and now let's zoom in 2 times. So right now, if I place my finger on the camera lens like this, it doesn't mean that it's just going to turn off or that you won't see anything on the camera. It just means that it's going to automatically switch to the main camera lens and use a digital zoom. So this is the great tech that Apple had implemented. It also uses, like, obviously their chips, which are super advanced, so it can really happen within seconds. So that's why it's kind of difficult for me to actually show to you what I mean by that. But obviously, if you go beyond that, so you can see right now we have 1x, so if you click on 2x, you can go even further than that, but right now we are only using the digital zoom alongside with the optical zoom, but optical zoom only to a certain point. You can 5 times digitally and 2 times optically. I mean, this is the basic math that you have with this. Obviously, you can use the 2 times optical zoom when you're taking a basic photo, when you're recording video, but keep in mind that if you switch from photo to video, it just comes back to 1 time zoom, so you have to click on 2 times again, and you can use slow motion as well. The same thing, it switches back to 1x, and you can also take the time lapse, but again, it just keeps switching to 1x to the basic settings, which is kind of annoying, but yeah, I think I can bear with this. You can take panorama photos, and here we also have the portrait mode, which is like the second main use of this lens, so I'm gonna be talking about that in just a second, but yeah, you also have that. I mean, obviously, once you take the photo already, it behaves like a basic image in your camera roll. No big deal. It doesn't really matter if you take it with the main lens, wide angle, or telephoto lens. It's always the same thing in your camera roll. Very same settings. You can use the filters. You can like all of the stuff. I'm not a fan of filters, but you can use it. Even with the 2x optical zoom, you can set up the timer. I mean, all of the basic stuff that you would use with the classic lens, you can also use it on the telephoto one. Now let's talk about the portrait mode. Like I mentioned, and this is like the second use and the second main purpose of the telephoto lens. There are a couple of things that you need to know about it. It's like I mentioned, the portrait photo is a photo with this soft bokeh and blurry background that imitates the professional look from a DSLR or mirrorless camera. So it really does a great job at imitating the look. Obviously, you don't have the same controls as you have on a real camera. It just doesn't work that way, but it just tries to do its best. So yeah, you have some depth controlling and you have some additional stuff that Apple keeps adding to like enhance this feature, but it will never be the same as like from a real camera lens. You should also keep in mind that even one lens camera setups on iPhones can do it. Apple tried to like experiment with this on the iPhone XR, and there we only have one camera lens, only the main one on the backside of the iPhone, and you can still take portrait photos, which look comparable. We also have the same thing on the iPhone SE 2020, a brand new iPhone which has just been released. For more coverage on that iPhone, make sure to take a look at my videos where I already talk about it, or stay tuned for unboxing, reviews, and stuff like that with the iPhone SE second generation. The one lens setup can do it, but only using software. Like, we also have that on front-facing cameras on the iPhone 10, iPhone 11 Pro. Like, obviously, when you're using portrait, it has to do it in a certain way. It doesn't really have like a really technical feature to make sure that the background is blurry, so it has to rely on software. So because it uses software, it can be used on an iPhone like the iPhone SE, which only has one lens on the backside of the phone, and still bring you some decent portrait photos. You also could argue that on the front side we have the notch on these iPhones, which means that it also has some additional features to like measure our face and the distance and stuff. I mean, yeah, this could be true, but think about the SE second generation once again. That one doesn't have the notch design and only has like a plain front-facing camera. So even on the SE second generation, you are able to take portrait photos with the front-facing selfie camera. So there has to be only software going on in like behind the curtains. That's why Apple actually ditched it. Probably with the XR, it was like a testing phase where they also removed 3D Touch to test it out, and yeah, it turned out to be a great idea. Great idea, I'm doing air quotes right now because I really like the 3D Touch, and I just hate that it's not part of the 11 Pro and all of the latest iPhones. But I guess that they will also keep on doing that. Like, the iPhone 11 already doesn't have the telephoto lens, and I guess this is a good idea because you don't really need it that much. By the time you're watching the video, you probably realize that this is probably the only use. I mean, what we have talked about are probably the only thing that you can use this lens for. So to look at the portrait photo, of course, open up camera and just click on portrait. There are two options now. So here you can use the 2x or 1x portrait mode. So you can use like zoomed in or zoomed out versions of the portrait photo. So if you're using like the 2x zoom on the portrait mode, you can just cover lens and nothing is going to happen. It just won't switch to a different lens no matter what you do, because it just uses this one and it just has to use only the telephoto lens. However, if you just click on the 1x, and I'm still keeping my finger on the telephoto lens, if I do it like this, you can see we have switched, but right now it just cannot use the telephoto lens to measure distance and stuff, so it's kind of bad either. Obviously do not cover your camera lens, but I'm just doing this to demonstrate how it actually works. Here at the bottom you also have like different filters for your photos. Apple is kind of proud of what they have put into the camera app. I don't really think that it's really that important. I didn't really use any filters. Like I said, I'm not a fan of filters because you can do all of the tweakings that you'd want in Photoshop, in Lightroom, and many different apps. So why would I ever put a filter on my photo? But do what you want. For some people, it's okay. Just like you could also have noticed, the iPhone actually gives me the instructions to move away from the subject, to bring it into focus and stuff. So once you get to the portrait mode, it just gives you instructions and tells you what to do in order to take the best photo. And speaking of the best photo, it used to be like this, especially with the iPhone 7 Plus, where the feature just was like brand new and the second lens was like kind of unknown. It was or used to work best with people, and it tried to guess the outlines of people the best. Right now, Apple is actually enhancing this and bringing it over to more stuff and more objects, so you can take a photo of your pet using portrait mode or any object. It's still a phone, it's not DSLR, but yeah, it is working a lot better now when you compare it to like iPhone 7 Plus or 8 Plus. Okay, so these were the main uses for the telephoto lens. If there are any tips that I can give you, like I've mentioned already in my wide-angle lens video, you can take a look at it if you want. I talk about a wide-angle lens and how you can use it and what it does basically. So you shouldn't really use it with third-party apps if you don't have to. Like, it looks so much better when you use the classic camera app, which is already built into the phone, and it just has to work the best when it comes to the classic camera app. And then you can easily upload it to a different place, like to Instagram and stuff. I mean, it's a completely different story when you're using it on Instagram, WhatsApp, or somewhere else, if it's actually possible at first place. Now, what is the bottom line? The wide-angle lens is actually useful in my opinion. I think that one is just really something that you end up using a lot more. But with the telephoto lens, it's kind of a different story in my opinion. I mean, if I would have to decide between the iPhone 10, which has the dual lens setup, and the iPhone 11, which has the dual lens setup as well, and the iPhone 10 has the telephoto lens and the iPhone 11 has the ultra wide angle lens, I would most definitely pick the iPhone 11. Of course, only when it comes to the viewpoint of the camera and when we are talking about the camera at all. I don't know, I'm kind of excited to see what Apple does with the iPhone 12. Right now we are getting close to the end of this video. I want to say thank you so much for watching. If you have watched until the end, I want to say thank you for your support and see you guys later in the next video.